BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Okay, and just a couple quick announcements before we start. First and foremost, it's been a couple days since our most recent Zodiac Killer upload, but thank you to everybody who checked out some of the other things we've been doing on the channel, talking about Annika Erzberg and the stolen meat murders, as well as Deerbox, the attack on Martin Andrews, which are some very powerful stories in their own right. And if you haven't heard those uploads yet, feel free to find them here on Black Box Online Radio. As well as, I would also like to say, if you are still trying to look for more and more Zodiac material, I would highly recommend you check out the Zodcast, which is available on Drew Beeson's channel. He hosts the Zodcast, Zodcast, as well as all the other videos on Drew Beeson's channel, especially if you're into the narrative of Don Chaney as a Zodiac killer suspect, or you just want to hear more about the Zodiac killer mystery. And I can see the comments that you guys are leaving here on Black Box Online Radio. You guys have a lot of things to say about Don Chaney as a Zodiac killer suspect, as well as just having some type of involvement in the mystery. And those are the things that I've been noticing recently. A lot of people have been leaving comments saying that even if they don't believe that Don Chaney was the Zodiac killer, perhaps he had some connection to the letters or the ciphers, being the author of those things, or maybe involved in the planning process. And somebody left a recent comment just saying, I think that Don Chaney had some involvement in this, but I'm not exactly sure how, but I still think he's involved. That's quoting somebody else who left a comment earlier today on this channel. So I can hear what you guys have to say. So once again, if you would like to hear more about that narrative, please visit the Zodcast on Drew Beeson's channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Zodiac killer suspect, Tony Tola. And I learned about this one because we did an upload on this channel recently called the Kelly Marshall Theory, Zodiac Killer Kelly Marshall Theory, because a lot of people were requesting that I would do a response to the documentary Zodiac Rush to Editor, which is about 30 minutes long. You can hear that on YouTube. And if you haven't heard our upload on that, I'm going to include a link to that in the description box here. The best way you can support this channel is just by listening to some other content, never asking for any money. Just all you got to do is listen. But you can really hear about the things that we say with Kelly Marshall and her possible solution to the Zodiac Killer 340 cipher. But the first thing she said was a name that she revealed from the 340 using her method was Tony. And she thought nobody really names their kid Tony. And in all fairness, more often than not, the name would be Anthony. So she's trying to connect this to Xenophon Anthony. And while I was watching this documentary, Zodiac Rush to Editor, I was like, well, is there another Zodiac suspect that was named Tony? And I mean, I was getting on Google while I'm watching the documentary on one screen. I'm looking up Zodiac killer suspects on the other screen. And we did mention Tony Tola briefly in our upload on the Kelly Marshall Theory. But I was, number one, I was really, glad to see that there is another suspect named Tony, and a lot of the things that she is saying about her solution to the 340 cipher might apply to somebody like Tony Tola. But then I was like, well, let's see what else they have to say about him. And sadly, there really isn't too much that has been written on Tony Tola. What I can say about him is that he was born on the 10th of October, 1931, and he passed away on the 1st of March, 1975, passed away from cancer. So that would rule out anything like the 1978 letter or some possible things that happened in the 1980s with the Zodiac Killer, if there were indeed any connection to Tony Tola passing away in 1975 from cancer. Some other things that we should say. Let's just get to the heart of the issue with Tony Tola. Even if we exclude Kelly Marshall's solution to the 340 cipher, possible solution that is, Tony Tola's name can be found in the 340. What you see here is on the screen right now, you can see that Tony Tola appears to be what is written using these symbols. Looks like we have a plus sign, we have a square, an N, a Y, then there's the Zodiac symbol, and then another plus sign, a square with a dot in it, an L, and then a triangle, which could also be a delta sign. And I remember reading a comment when somebody was like, that really does appear to be the name Tony, and that does appear to be Tola. Like, granted, I've seen the 340 many times. I'm sure you've seen the 340 cipher many times, and you've probably looked at that. And I never once saw Tony Tola until somebody highlighted it in red. So what I can say about that is it definitely does appear to be very clear. it's not like some of those things where you would see an X and an A together on something, and they're like, oh, that must be Xenophon Anthony because there's an X and an A next to each other. That's the only possibility. I don't accept that. And even back when they were trying to say that Geik appeared in the cipher, I also did not think that that was very convincing. I mean, yeah, it really does look like that it's Tony Tola in the cipher, but I would just like to ask the question, do you believe the Zodiac killer? I mean, one of the things the Zodiac promised was that if you were to crack the ciphers, it would reveal his identity. And somebody left a recent comment here on Black Box Online Radio when they were simply saying that that was a total lie. The 408 cipher was solved very easily. I like killing people because it's so much fun. The one that has been solved to everybody's satisfaction, that was a simple substitution cipher. And really what Don Hardin and his wife had to do was they had three parts of it. They had to put them in order, and then they found the letter I, and you know the story, right? So they figured it out. But that didn't take very long. That definitely didn't take 51 years at the time of this recording, more than 5 decades. What somebody said was, and maybe this is true, we always have to bear in mind the ciphers may be arbitrary. We have the 408, which has been mostly cracked, except for the final line, the 18 symbols at the bottom. And then we have the Z32, the Z13, and the Z340. The 340, which you're looking at now. And with this one, they're just saying, these things have been through computers. These things have been examined for 50 years. No one can figure out the meaning. They don't have any meaning. These things are arbitrary. And the Zodiac did not hide his identity in the cipher. And I have to tell you, I've even thought about that in the past. Have you thought about that before? What would happen if the Zodiac did put his real identity into the ciphers and somebody solved it immediately? Maybe either somebody was really smart, really sharp with this stuff, or perhaps they just got lucky and they cracked the cipher on a whim or something. Wouldn't he be arrested? And as you see Tony Tola in the cipher, another thing that I was reading was some people were saying it almost looks so obvious that perhaps Tony Tola wasn't the Zodiac killer, but he was somebody that knew the Zodiac killer's identity, and the Zodiac was just taunting somebody he knew, or just, I mean, even if the Zodiac and Tony Tola didn't know each other, I mean, like, even if Tony Tola did not know the Zodiac killer's identity, he would still be taunting him. It was a tease more than anything else. Right now, what I would like to do is to jump over to a post that was written by Ophion1031. We've talked about Ophion before on the channel, and this is coming to us from ZodiacKillersite.com in the forum section. In the 340, you will see Tony Tola with the Zodiac symbol smack dab in the middle of the names. And that's very important to note. The Zodiac symbol is a divider in this. At first, I thought maybe it was some sort of message saying to NY, like to New York, and then to Los Angeles. Yeah, I mean, that's a good observation, mind you. Like TONY, to New York, to Los Angeles, the Zodiac is coast to coast. But when we started looking at Tony Tola from Santa Cruz, not a whole lot of info was on him at the moment, but his name being in the cipher is worth looking into. He'd have to be pretty dumb to put his name in the cipher if he was the killer. So another possibility is that someone was maybe trying to set him up. And we get this narrative a lot. I think that this narrative is going to be happening much more frequently when people are going to be like, okay, somebody was not trying to share their identity. They're sharing somebody else's identity. They want to frame them. Or even if you did figure it out, then their name wouldn't be on it. So-and-so's name would be on it. The Xenophon Anthony and Shell Cavale narrative is also tied into something like that. Or even in the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, that is kind of done intentionally, the way that Thomas Henry Horn lays it out, saying that you had one person writing the letters and one person writing the ciphers. He accuses Robert Graysmith of being an active participant in the Zodiac Killer incidents, saying that Hal Snook wrote the letters and Robert Graysmith composed the ciphers. And if you're able to figure out one thing, then you would never be able to connect the whole thing because one person wrote this and one person wrote that. Nobody would be able to put all the pieces together, at least not until all of these people had passed away. Hal Snook passed away in 2010. I think we're going to be experiencing that very frequently. It's a common narrative that gets repeated over and over again. As far as being from Santa Cruz, it appears that Tony Tola lived in Santa Cruz, Sacramento, and in Oregon. And Mike Morford was able to pull up his obituary. So credits to Morph. And let's just read some of that here. Anthony Tola also known as Tony, was a native of Soquel, died Sunday in Redmond, Oregon. He was 43 years old. After attending local schools, he worked briefly in Santa Cruz and then moved to Sacramento. But soon thereafter, he returned to Santa Cruz and worked in construction, becoming a partner in K&T Trucking in Apton. He later was employed by the Grant Construction Company. Then he moved to Madras, one where he farmed wheat and mint. He is survived by his wife Pat Tola and their daughters Ruth, Vicky, and Jamie, all of Madras, and a son, Anthony. Okay, yeah, that is the way it is written. All of Madras and a son, Anthony Tola. Four brothers, Angelo, Paul, Frank, and Bruno, and all of Santa Cruz. Okay, so there's the obituary goes on there for a second, and in some places his name is written as Antonio. That was another thing that Morph was able to dig up, and it appears to be the same guy because we know the same K&T Trucking Company that we heard there in the obituary. But is the same person that is connected to this Antonio Tola. So you might see his name written Antonio a few times, but his legal name does appear to be Anthony Tola, and of course he went by Tony, as many people do. Now, about this thing, though, do you really think that the Zodiac Killer would just write his name out in the cipher like that? I mean, we know Edgar Allan Poe, the purloin letter. For some reason, that was a hard thing to say. Well, yeah, but I'm talking about getting tripped up and such. It's like hiding in plain sight. Do you really think the Zodiac would have been all about it? Because people are just going to be just like, hey, look, there it is. Tony Tola. This guy is giving away his identity. First and foremost, based on everything that we have here, talking about some of his things, you like living on an Air Force base, even is another thing that they have written here. And we can say that, I should say, his wife and son had connections to the Air Force base. Tony Tola's name is not mentioned specifically. But what we should say is that he did work for the trucking company, right? It appears, though, that the Zodiac Killer had a very high understanding of math, science, and possibly engineering. I'm not sure that anything is jumping out at me based on these little informations that we have about Tony Tola. But what I think is much more compelling and fascinating is just to look at the thought process that could be involved with the Zodiac Killer. You know, for the longest time, I really wanted to believe that the Zodiac did not just create these arbitrary ciphers, the Z13, the Z32, and the 340. I didn't want to accept that because I was like, you know, let's not just give up. Let's not just assume, oh, they're all duds, or there's no meaning in them, there's nothing going on. I mean, I almost thought that was too easy, or taking the shortcut and just saying, obviously, they're all fake, no one was able to solve them. But in all seriousness, maybe there could be some truth to that. I mean, I've been thinking about that a little bit more recently. I think that that's a rather pessimistic way to look at it, but at the same time, there you have it, though. Tony Tola is written in the cipher. And if you include the symbol in the middle, not only is that a divider, Tony Tola, Zodiac Killer. And even if he lived Santa Cruz, Sacramento, Oregon, he would have had easy access to the Bay Area. I mean, Brian Hartnell's car at Lake Berryessa was even purchased from a showroom in Oregon. It's possible to cross the border from Oregon into California. It's possible to go from Sacramento to the Bay Area, no matter where he was in 1968 or 69, as long as he's in that vicinity. And a lot of people have looked at that possibility. We mentioned the Don Chaney narrative. Well, it's possible that in that, the way that is laid out, that Chaney could have committed the Lake Herman Road murders in December of 1968, and then left and moved out of the area, and that's why there was such a large gap from Lake Herman Road to Blue Rock Springs on the 4th of July, because Chaney was coming back to the area at the time. Like those were the times that he could get away. So, I mean, we're going to see this time and time again where they're going to say that the Zodiac Killer was not completely confined to the Bay Area, or that he didn't have to live in Napa County or Vallejo or San Francisco year round. So I think that that is worth thinking about, or worth looking at, or meaning that somebody could have arrived in in the Bay Area, committed the murders, and then moved to a different location. Does this mean we're dealing with somebody like Donald Lee Booyock? I don't really think so, because I didn't. I was kind of impressed with the way that Kevin Robert Brooks structured that narrative, but that's all it is. It was just a structured narrative. I really didn't see anything that jumped out at me that gave me that aha moment. And sadly, I have to say some of that about Tony Tola. And I would also just like to share one more thing that was written over here on Zodiac Killer Forum Motion, which says, written by Zode Mode. Tony Tola's name appears in the 340 cipher with a crosshair right in between the first and last name. If Tony was the Zodiac, this would be a dumb move. I wonder where he got that sentence from. A couple of other people have pointed out that maybe Tola knew the Zodiac, and the Zodiac got a kick out of putting his name in the cipher so that cops would investigate him. I don't think that Tola makes an interesting person of interest, but not much is about him. And it does say that. I don't think Tola makes an interesting person of interest. I mean, how do we really know yet? I mean, there's so little information about him. But I do think that a lot of people are going to be looking at the 340 cipher, and they're going to say that this is the largest cipher that is yet to be cracked. And they're going to be like, okay, I found a new suspect in the 340 cipher. It's going to happen more and more frequently. And we even mentioned, Kelly Marshall's possible solution. We also talked about Corey Starliper's possible solution. And we said Kelly Marshall's revealed Xenophon and Anthony. Corey Starliper's possible solution to the 340 cipher revealed Arthur Lee Allen. The final line of that would read out, "My name is Lee Allen." So, do you believe that the Zodiac Killer genuinely hid his name in these ciphers? And the second question we had was, do you think that this stuff is arbitrary, like all the ciphers, that other than the 408? Do you think that they have any meaning at all, or are they just arbitrary? One point, though, if you look at this at the 340 cipher, you will see that there is the letter K there, like the backwards K, the one that has been crossed out, and then a backwards letter K has been written above. One of the points that Kelly Marshall made about that was that the Zodiac would have only done that if this was indeed a real meaning. That would be the only motivation. And that is one point where I would have to disagree completely. I mean, that's mind reading, I would have to say. I mean, she's not a mind reader. How does she have that specific ability to know that that's exactly what the Zodiac Killer was thinking? Because if you hear some of the other possibilities, we talked about, yeah, okay, this guy could be hiding in plain sight, but also one of the possibilities is that somebody was using a manual on handwriting techniques and ways to disguise things. The most common techniques used to disguise handwriting, the most common techniques used in cryptographic messages. Somebody could have learned about that from not only books, but also perhaps law enforcement training. Like, how would you be able to create a code that would keep people constantly guessing? And so I am not convinced at all that that is the only reason why one of the symbols would be crossed out. I mean, if I were going to compose a fake message with 340 characters, I would be using every trick under the sun. I will tell you another thing. One of the things I would like to share is, actually, I can even ask you guys, what would you do? Let's play that angle. If you were a serial killer and you're sending in these messages, would you put your real identity in there? I definitely would. Yes, absolutely. But I would do it in such a bizarre way that nobody would ever figure it out. I mean, I would actually put my real name in there. And I looked at this 340 cipher, and you can see that there's that Zodiac symbol in the center of Tony Tola. And I thought about just counting up all the crosshairs and the circles, and like the circle with the crosshair going through, like the Zodiac sign. Let's just count up all of those. Maybe that'll reveal something. I would do something like that. Or if you look at the first three letters, or first three characters, we should say, in the cipher, it almost looks like the word H-E-R, her. And then if you go all the way to the side, it almost looks like G-O-D for God, her, God. And then I was like, oh, the answer must be in the corners. Yeah, I would put my real information in the cipher if I were going to do that. I've never killed anyone. I don't intend on becoming a serial killer ever, but it's like, I mean, it highly is possible that there are meanings in all of these ciphers that haven't been cracked. The Z13, the Z32, and the 340, which you're looking at now. But it's perhaps that it really just does indeed have something that is so bizarre out there and twisted. And if you do answer any single question, I would really like to hear your response to the last one. If you were creating something like this, like the way that the Zodiac created the 340 or the 32 or the 13, would you hide your real identity in the ciphers? But also, what do you think about this? Do you think there are precise meanings, or are these just arbitrary things? Supercomputers couldn't even give us 100% certain answers. What do you have to say about any of this? And maybe someday we'll learn some more information about Tony Tola. As of now, I don't think there's enough info to make a ruling either way, but I mean, it's rather interesting to look at that line in the 340 cipher, but so based on some of the other things about him, I mean, did he really have all of the abilities to create this, or we'll see as we find some more things out. I can definitely say that this does resemble his name, but it's almost too simple, and maybe, maybe not, but what do you have to say about anything related to our challenge questions? All right, that's all for me now. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. But most importantly, please drop some comments in the section below so we can continue the discussion. I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast, and I will practice my pronunciation. Edgar Allan Poe, the purloined letter hiding in plain sight, and I'll try to get everything down pat next time. All right, that's all for me now. Until next time.